Hello and welcome to the shop. After I made my colored pencil pen the other day, my wife saw it and she fell in love with the blank. She asked me if I would make one for her. Now I've got these two cutoffs from either end of the colored pencil blank that I made, and a quick note, and I mentioned this in the video, I put a piece of wood across the bottom, straight across the bottom, to be able to align my pencils. Had I put that at a 45-degree angle, I would have probably been able to get two more blanks out of this large blank. But that's not going to be a big deal. These two little short blanks, I think I can cut these up and make a top and a bottom half for a pen. She wants a more of a slimline pen, and she has chosen a kit called the Chicline. The Chicline is from Penn State. It's kind of neat. It has a different shape to the nib, and then around the center band and the cap, it has some really delicate filigree. It's a beautiful kit. I think you guys are going to like it too, and that's what we're going to do today, is build a pen for my wife. I've got my colored pencil blank in my pen vise, and I'm ready to drill a 7mm hole down the center. This always makes me nervous because when you have a pen like this with as many different pieces glued together as this one, you don't want to put too much pressure on it with the vise because you're always afraid you will crush the blank and maybe cause the pieces to come apart. Also, the wood that these colored pencils are made out of is not probably the highest quality wood, and it can actually crush as well. So we want to be real careful. So let's go ahead and center this up, and let's get a hole drilled down the middle. A little bit of an issue on the back end there. I think what we're going to do is, let me try running this through the drill press and cleaning that up. I see what happened. It gave way at the back end. We're going to have to put a little more glue on here and glue this back together, and then we should be able to drill through the blank. The first blank that I drilled went fairly well, with one exception. We had a little blowout down here at the end. Not too worried about that. Nothing damaged really bad. That's fixable, and we're going to work on that in just a minute. Let's get our second blank drilled out. This one went a lot better. We had no blowout, and we came right out the center on the back of the blank, went right in the center on the front, so this one turned out really well. I'm going to go ahead and glue the tube in the blank that I was able to drill without any issue. We'll check it first to make sure that the tube's going to fit well, and it does. So let's get a little bit of CA glue on here. Just get it right below the surface. Got a nice fit. That's going to work out really well. The other thing that we'll do is I'll come back in a few minutes and I will douse the raw wood on this blank with a thin CA glue and let it soak in to really help solidify the fibers of the pencils. Now for this blank, I'm just going to drown it in CA. I'm going to put it back together. I don't normally like to use the activator, but I'm going to. And I don't like to use it because it dries so quickly, but I need it to in this case because I have no way to really clamp that. So what I'm going to do is put this aside. I'm going to let it finish drying naturally because the outer shell of CA, it was so thick, the outer shell will be dry, but you can see there's still CA dripping out of the blank. So we'll go ahead and make sure we get some inside of it. Just get it really good. And we'll let it sit there and dry. What I'm going to do now is apply some thin CA glue all over this blank. I'm just going to put down a piece of wax paper because I don't want this blank to stick to my cardboard. And then we're just going to douse it in CA. I will not put any activator on this. You can see it's just soaking in like crazy. That is exactly what I want because that will help the fibers stick together and it will make it much easier for me to turn. Okay. Got to be careful now. I've got a little bit of that CA on my fingers now, and I can feel it starting to dry. There we go. We're just going to let that blank set and dry, and in a little while we'll come back and finish this blank. I gave the CA for this blank plenty of time to dry. I'm going to go ahead now and attempt to re-drill the hole. This is going to be tricky because I need to line it up exactly the way it was lined up when I first drilled it. And the reason why is I need to go down through this hole and exit the bottom, and I need to ream out any of the CA that's inside of the hole, but I don't want to ream the hole out to where there's a whole bunch of play and the tube can move around in there. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to attempt to run this up by hand just a little bit to get it started, and then we'll put it in the vise. That helps me line the blank up. Now what I'll do is I'll back the blank off, open up my vise a little bit here. Let's tighten her down. All right, and let's go ahead and go through the rest of the blank. Nice and smooth. What we'll do is we'll glue our tube in from this side of the blank, which will eliminate as much of this as possible, so that we shouldn't have an issue. We will go ahead and saturate the blank just like we did the other one with CA, and we'll make sure on the sides here that we saturate it as well, so if there are any other areas where I didn't get a good application of my epoxy, the CA can soak down in there and sort of fill the voids. I'm ready to glue this blank up, and I did make sure there were no obstructions. Got a nice tight fit. It had a little bit of snugness to it as it went into the blank. I'm going to get plenty of CA on here. Uh-oh, there we go. Got a little nervous there for a second. All right, we're in the blank. Everything looks good. Now what I want to do is saturate it with some thin CA glue to help the fibers. Try to be a little neater this time and not glue my fingers up. I got a little bit of CA on them last time. Didn't hurt anything, but kind of makes it tough to hold stuff. Ooh, did it again. I really need to wear some gloves when I do this. Okay. There we go. See how it soaks through the pencils? It's already coming through the other side. The thin CA goes right down through those pencils. We're just going to let it sit there, dry naturally, no activator, and we'll come back and move on with turning it once the CA is completely dry. I got both of my blanks squared up. You can see the tube is right at the edge of the blank. These blanks are ready to go to the lathe. I will go ahead and put another coat of thin CA glue on each end to just support the fibers, but other than that, they are ready to be turned. These colored pencil blanks are ready to go to the lathe. I've even put a little CA glue on the ends after I flattened them out. But one more thing I need to do is I want to round the edges over, because I don't want to take a chance at my gouge catching and ripping one of those pencils out of the blank. So we're just going to round them over a little bit, then we'll get them on the lathe. I really think rounding these over is going to help. And now that I've done that, I've got a lot of raw wood. I'm going to go ahead and put a little thin CA on there. It won't take very long to dry, and then we can get these on the lathe. I've got my homemade colored pencil blank chucked up. I am a tiny bit nervous about turning this one, and the main reason why is because the pen kit that I'll be using is called the Chicline, The Chicline is it's a slimline pin kit, but it's a fancy style slimline pin kit. And what that means is these are going to have to be turned down to 7mm bushing. So I'm really going to have to take these down. That makes me a little nervous because, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to find out. I paused my lathe because I wanted to talk about this for a second. Notice how this blank, when I cut it, it's a little bit concave. And this blank, it's maybe a 1/2 inch wide this way and maybe 1 inch wide this way. What that means is, watch this. When I turn it on, do you see the shadow? I have to watch that shadow, and as I'm coming in to cut, I want to come in very carefully, and I'm watching the back of my blank. And as I make contact, I want to keep my cut very light, and I want to continue to watch the back of the blank. And as I cut, you can see the shadow begin to disappear. So I'm cutting air, and you want to make sure, you know, you don't start cutting out here and then you get over here and you jam it in, because when you get down here and it edges back out, you're going to take a big chunk out. So you're gonna have to set yourself, start cutting, and just carry it right across. And see the gap? That's just the way it is. You're going to have to cut a little bit of air. Same thing with this one. I'll be cutting air when it's this way, and I'll be cutting blank when it's this way. So you got to be real careful about that. You get too hard on these, too aggressive, and you're going to blow them out right off the bat. I feel pretty lucky so far. I've taken the blanks down quite a bit. Still got a little flat spot there. This blank is for the most part round, but what I want to do is put a little thin CA on each of the blanks and just let it soak in. And the main reason for that is, you know, I'm just trying to keep the leads in the pencils. And I want to make sure that everything sticks together nice. So we're just going to work some CA on there. You can see it's already soaked in on the other side. The thin is the best to use for this because it just literally just soaks into the blank and just disappears. I'm putting it on a little heavier than I probably need to. I'll try to back off a little bit here. I can see some dripping off the blank, so that's how I know I'm putting it on too heavy. I want to put enough to let it soak in and seal the fibers, but not enough to where you know, I end up just letting it run off, because when I fire this up, it's going to throw it everywhere. I'm just going to spin this by hand for a couple of minutes while that CA starts to dry. I don't want to have to hit it with activator, but if it doesn't dry, I'll give it a quick spritz. Give it plenty of time to soak in. Looks like I might have missed a spot right here. Let me get a little bit more on there. Yeah, that looks good. Tell you what I'm going to do. This is some older thin CA. I use about half of a bottle of. Let me explain. I use about half a bottle of my CA finish. And if I notice it starts getting thick, then I turn the CA finish into just a general purpose, you know, things like solidifying fibers in blanks, filling cracks, things like that. And I open a new bottle, and that's personal preference for me. And this looks a little bit thick. It's almost to the point of being a medium. I watched it soak in, so I know it's still thin enough to soak in, but I think it's staying pretty tacky. Like if I touch that, See it on my finger? So I'm going to get my activator and give this a spritz so I can get back to turning. Still kind of wet. Take a second. All right, everything is good and dry now, and we're ready to get back to turning. I went ahead and shut the lathe down, and the reason why is my tool is starting to get dull. See the buildup on the tool from the CA, and when you run your finger across it, I don't really feel, right in the center there, I can kind of feel the burr, but I don't feel anything else on the sides. It's relatively smooth. So I'm going to sharpen my tool up, come back, and I'll turn this blank down a little bit. Then we'll get a little CA on both of them. This one's almost where it needs to be. I like how it looks. I'm a little disappointed about this. I turned away most of the colors, but we'll see what it looks like when I get finished. No telling what that'll turn out to look like in the end. So let me get sharpened up and I'll be right back. Before sharpening, I'm taking a little bit of 400 grit sandpaper and I'm rubbing it on the inside of the tool, and that is because the CA buildup is also on top of the tool, and I need that to be gone so it's not, you know, it's not going to be in the way after I sharpen. I don't want a little lump of material here. And you can see I've painted the back of my skew black with a black marker. See that straight line? That lets me know that I have my Wolverine sharpening jig set to the proper distance to give me the exact angle cut that I want. So I'm going to go run this across the grinder and we'll be back to start turning. And just like that, we have a razor sharp roughing gouge. Let's get back to turning. Turn the pin down as far as I dare. I got the bottom half quite a bit thinner because my wife, she likes the pin to be relatively thin where you hold it. And I left a little bit of thickness on the top blank so I could keep all of the colored pencils. Did a much nicer job of drilling that one because you can see I've got dots down the middle and then the slab on each side. So I really like that one. I'm going to go ahead now, and I've got my good CA. This is my finishing CA. And what we're going to do is put just one thin coat on here. And that one thin coat will act as a sanding sealer. As I sand this, I will not have trouble with my, colors bleeding into the wood. First thing we want to do is slow the lathe down. Slowed the lathe down as slow as it'll go. And I'm ready to go ahead and apply a little bit of thin CA. By using my finishing CA, this coat dried in about 10, maybe 15 seconds. Thin CA soaks in and dries almost immediately. That's why I'm very careful about when my CA starts to thicken up, I get it out of the rotation and I use it for more utilitarian functions. I'm at the point now where I'm ready to sand this down. So what I'm going to do is, because this pencil, the wood has so much fiber in it, I'm going to flip these blanks around and I'm going to rotate them or sand them in the opposite direction, and I will rotate them between each grit of sandpaper. So we're going to start off by just flipping them over. Okay, there we go. Flip this one over. We will sand in, essentially sanding in reverse. I don't have a reverse on my lathe, so when I do this, loosen that up. There we go, tighten things down. You see, so what happens is I turned it this way. So the fibers, any fibers that are laying down are pointing this way. When I sand, it's going to raise those fibers and cut them off. So as I rotate these blanks between each grid of sandpaper, I'm going to take those fibers farther and farther down until they're almost unnoticeable, and you'll get a much better finish on your pen. Got the blank sanded down to 400 grit, and now what I want to do is clean it up with a little denatured alcohol. And one thing I want you to notice when I shut this lathe off is look how bright the wood is. Very little, if any, bleeding of the colors. That's what that one coat of thin can do for you. It doesn't stop you from sanding the blank down, but it does protect that blank from bleeding. This works great with multicolored woods, like let's say you've got some padauk and some maple, or some walnut and some maple, and you sand it and it bleeds. You put one coat of thin on there and then sand it, it won't bleed. I'm going to start off by applying 5 coats of a thin CA, and then I'll follow that up with 4, maybe 5 coats of a medium. I've got 2 coats of thin CA on there, but I want to show you something. Take a look at this. I bought an off-brand, a cheap off-brand of paper towels, and they are smoking like crazy when the CA hits them, and it stuck to my finger, and when I went to pull it off and grab it and yank it, it stuck to my thumb. So I've got a little bit of paper stuck to me. I'll be able to get this off with some acetone, but the cheap paper towels aren't always a bargain for turners. I've put my blank back on the lathe with my turning bushings, and I'm ready to go after this blank with a little bit of micro mesh. As soon as you're done with the micro mesh, you can already see the blank really starting to shine. Next up, we're going to get the buffing wheel on the lathe, and we'll go ahead and buff this to a really nice shine. The blank really buffed up beautifully. I mean, it looks amazing. Just look at the shine. I'm going to go ahead now and put it together. Here's a couple features of this Chicline kit. Take a look at the nib. Compared to a regular nib, it's sort of got this nice little curve to it. Just gives it a little different look. It actually assembles the same way. Okay, there we go. And if you take a look at that, I've got a really nice fit right there. Look at that. Tight fit all the way around. No overlap. There's no fingernail or anything there. It feels really smooth. Here's the back half of the pen. Take a look. It's got a little roller ball here, or a little wheel. It actually, it does roll, doesn't it? Okay. It's got a little filigree around the cap. This is a one-piece cap and clip set that comes with this one. Looks really nice. Going to clip it into here, and I think what I'm going to do is go right down this gray one. The gray one has a little bit of a smear there, and I'm going to cover that up, I do believe. Flip that around. I always like to have the chrome end or the shiny end against the block down there. Get my camera to focus here. There we go. And once again, we have a beautiful, beautiful fit there. I'm really happy with that. I think it looks amazing. Transmission assembles the same as the transmission in any slimline pin. We're just going to press it in. I like to press in. You've got the brass, and then you've got this little sort of an indentation, little ring right here. I always like to press it into the brass and then test it, and then I can always push it a little more. I don't want to press it in too far, because taking it out it can happen, but it takes a little bit of care. You got to be very careful with it. So let's get that started. And you can see the brass going in nice and easy, and we stop at the brass. Okay, go ahead and insert our camera. Got out of focus again there. Oh wow, look at that. That is perfect. Okay, we've got our trim ring, and this is your trim ring with this pin. It's just got some nice filigree around it. It's really pretty. Slides on like any trim ring. We close our pin or retract our ink, and that's how you line your blank up. With the ink retracted, you twist the pin into the position you want it. And there we have a beautiful pen. Now I will tell you, I made a mistake on this one, and I just noticed it. Shouldn't point your mistakes out, but I wanted these pencils to point the same way as these pencils. And it looks like I put the cap in the wrong end of the blank. A little disappointed about that. I think what I'm going to do is get my tool, and I'm going to knock it out, press it into this end, and we're going to swap it around. First thing we'll do is remove the cap. I've got this set of pliers here that have the rubber tips on them to protect the blank. Let me open them up and tighten them down a little bit more. Make sure I get a good grip. Got a fly in the shop tonight. There we go. We'll drop our punch into our blank. I'm going to hold it. There we go. Nice and easy. No damage to the blank. And now I'm going to make sure, I'm going to double check this time. I want the blank to go like, oh, let's see, like this. Okay. We're going to make darn sure we do it right this time. We're going to pop it right in. We're going to go right back into the same side. Let's see, I need to put a couple of blocks back in here. There we go. We'll get her started. I'll twist it to exactly where I want it. There we go. That's tight. And all the way in. Perfect. I think that's even better. Look at that. I've got a much nicer fit. On the other one, it looked pretty good. It felt pretty good, but I thought I saw a bit of a fingernail because this end might be a tiny bit fatter. Once again, we are going to line our blank up with the pen in the closed position. And now what you see is all of the colored pencils go in the same direction. I'm going to pull that off and line it back up. There we go. Now that is what, well, a little bit more. That's what I'm looking for. You get a hold of this where you can see it. It's hard to hold. I got a little bit of that CA glue on my fingers, and it makes everything really slippery. I think the pen turned out fantastic. I would like to thank you for joining me in the shop tonight. This was a fun pen to turn. My wife, I think, is really going to like it. I like it. I think it looks amazing. I love the Chicline kit. It's heavier than a standard slimline, and it feels like the transmission operates better. It's probably the same darn transmission, so it's probably all in my head, but it just seems like it's a little bit nicer kit all around. I really appreciate you joining me tonight. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. You come back and see me again real soon. Take care, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.